Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer. It's great to be with you today, and it is a thrilling Thursday. So let's jump in and talk about our next section of Module 3, and which is the Report of Findings module. And then this week happens to be week 6, which is called Creating Care Plans. And in this section, I want to just first of all emphasize the importance of creating care plans, right? We have to have a path laid out for our patients to get from point A to point B, right? They came to us with some need, maybe it was a symptom, some health challenge, and we have to chart a course to get them out of that rut or that situation and onto ultimately optimum health and hopefully subluxation free, maximized quality of life. So, excuse me, to do that, we have to lay out our roadmap. And that's where creating care plans comes in. I know that there's some practices out there that will maybe go visit by visit, or let's kind of see how it goes. And obviously the main thing is that people are getting adjusted, right? And getting their chiropractic care. But in that methodology, if you will, we want to think about what the alternative is. What is it that people are experiencing and are being exposed to? And I'll even go so far as to say pressured with the minute they leave your office. What is it? Well, they're being pressured with symptoms drive your decisions. That's it, right? So when they leave your office, who else is giving them a roadmap to reach optimum health? Is Tylenol going to do that? Is Sudafed going to do that? Is the next blockbuster drug going to do that? No. What they're focusing on is this short-term relief, this symptom-based healthcare, and really not anything close to the paradigm that we operate in with chiropractic care. So I'm accentuating this today, or I'm emphasizing this today, because for those of you who might not yet be comfortable with recommending an extended care plan, think of who you're up against. But maybe more importantly, think of what your patients want. Now, I know we're all busy, and it's easy to fall into the trap of, I'll worry about it when it's a crisis. I'll worry about it when it's so symptomatic that it's preventing me from doing the things that I want to do. That's when I'll take action. And I understand that. I know that we're all busy. And maybe that is what drives the new patients in to see you. But I want to plant the seed for you. I want to emphasize for you that looking at it from the patient standpoint, what is it that they really want? What they really want is to be able to do the things that they enjoy doing. And short-term relief, while it may provide that benefit on a short-term basis or a more immediate gratification kind of basis, if you were to really sit down and ask your patients, which one would you prefer? Do you want the short-term fix with a Band-Aid? And this is after the dust has settled, I guess, after they're out of that acute situation, if you were to ask them that. Or would you prefer something more long-term that's going to elevate you to a higher standard, a higher threshold of health, that you could, in that threshold, you could do more of what you enjoy, and you could enjoy longevity in a way where in the years to come, you feel stable, you feel like you're in control, that you are controlling your destiny. Which one would you like? And of course, I am going to answer for our patients. They would choose the latter. They would choose I want the long-term benefit. I want to be able to continue doing the things that I love to do. Get me out of this situation. But then, yes, let's talk about that long-term. Now, sometimes patients come and go a couple times before that really sinks in, right? We have patients that discontinue and then they reactivate because they're flared up. But over time, if you keep asking that question, why are you doing this? What is it that you're looking for? What they're going to come back to, and I'm going to jump into my slides right here. They're going to come back to, doctor, I want a care plan. And they won't say it just like that, of course, but what they're going to say and what you're going to hear them requesting is lay out my roadmap, right? So I want to just really emphasize that because yes, we can get into the whole short-term symptomatic relief part of chiropractic. Excuse me, I got something in my eye. But what we really want to do is give our patients what they're truly looking for, which is a vehicle to maintain the level of health that they desire so they can keep doing the things that they desire for as long as possible. So just want to emphasize that. Now in chiropractic, in DC trainings, we have our little slogan, right? And if you haven't heard this slogan, I want to share it with you. That slogan is lifetime care, 1 year at a time. Lifetime care, 1 year at a time. And when it comes right down to it, and I'm in practice just like you full time, we can create a huge following of patients with as many patients as you want to take care of that subscribe to that methodology. And so, but they won't do it if you don't plant the seed, if you don't bring it up, if you don't even talk about it. Of course, they won't even know about it. So let's dive into how do you create these care plans? How do you do it in a way that gets your patients the results that they want, and it gets you the roadmap for them to follow, gets them the roadmap that they want to follow, and it's going to get you higher retention, which ultimately leads to a more successful practice, a more long-term following of patients. That's where you're going to get with this. Okay. I just want to remind you that our upcoming seminar is going to be on July 13th. That's coming up pretty soon. We're already in week 6, so I'm looking forward to seeing you all there. And but in the meantime, let's jump right in and go through the creating care plans section. So I want to just emphasize something first, because it says don't modify your rejections for fear of rejection. What does that mean? I've been doing this a long time, almost 3 decades now. And I know that when I go into a report of findings and I really want that patient to be my patient, please be my patient, I want to take care of you, right? That if I already know ahead of time that there's some reservations in their mind, that maybe they're thinking, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I can afford this, I don't know if I want to do this, I might pull back my recommendations. I might say, I'd like to see this patient, and this is just hypothetical, but let's say I want to see this patient 3 times a week for 8 weeks initially, and then I want to carry that out to a year with maintenance care or wellness care or supportive care. But I already know, because they told me on the first visit, that they are very unlikely to follow through with 3 times a week for 8 weeks. So I might pull back on that. Now, what does that do? That compromises the patient's results. It compromises your practice. It compromises your recommendations, what you feel is best and right and correct for this patient to receive, compromises that, and it compromises the results. The care plan, right? It compromises the relationship, because you're not truly recommending what it is that you feel would really benefit that patient in the best way possible. So we want to be careful about that. I like to review my recommendations without the patient there. I like to do it after the new patient has left for the day. We get all the findings together, the exam results, the consultation details, and I put that together and I look at it objectively and I say, okay, based on this situation, this person, this individual, here's what I think would be the best fit for them. Irregardless of here's what their insurance is, here's where I think they live out of town, anything like that. I want it to be truly objective, and that way I can make the best decision as far as what my recommendations are for that patient. So I fill that out based on my findings, not based on fear of rejection. So just wanted to plant that seed and make sure that that's clear. Now, for the next step, we want to explain the recommendations, and we're going through this whole report of findings sequence, right? We're already in week 6. So I hope you're following along and taking notes and really gathering each piece of this so that when they all fit together, it comes through like a perfect sequence in your office, perfect flow for each patient that comes in. So we're going to explain our report of findings script. That's before the recommendations, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But just to frame that, so you understand the flow, what did we do? We had the report of findings where we started with the push off, and this is me going in with my CA. My CA is going to deliver the report of findings. I'm doing the introduction. So I do the first push off and say, with me agreeing to accept you as a patient, it's only with the understanding that you agree to follow my recommendations. Then my CA goes over the general aspect of subluxations, shows them what happens when subluxations progress without proper care. And I want to throw in a little line here that you may want to write this down, because I just had a report of findings this week. It was Tuesday, with a parent and her son was the patient. And I was showing her the progression of this. And I showed her a phase 2, which had degeneration visible on it. And I said, no child should ever reach a phase 2. Nobody should, but certainly no child, because this is a preventable condition. So if we take care of this correctly, nobody should ever get this far. Now, unfortunately for you, your child has come in with these symptoms, but as we can see on the exam findings, he's not in a phase 2 yet. So prevention is really important right now. So anyways, I just use that frame of mind, but going back to our overview. So then we go over the subluxations in a general fashion, right? Here's what happens to subluxations. Then we went over the results. We showed them their subluxations. Then we did our future health projections, right? With the projecting to the future. And that concluded with what? The demand for care. We did that last week, right? The demand for care is where we have that next, the number 2 in a 3-part sequence with the push-off, right? The demand for care. So the patient says, tell me what you recommend, or tell me what the doctor's recommending, right? And that brings us to this point. Once we get to this point, then they say, I want to know what the doctor recommends. Now we say, let me show you an overview of how the recommendations work. Okay, so we started with subluxations from a general aspect, and then we said, now let me show you your subluxations. Now we're going to start with a general overview of the recommendations. Then we're going to get specific with their recommendations. So there's this building process that we go through. Now, as we do that, they're learning, they're being educated, they're absorbing this information, and they're really letting it sink in, because this is going to be a new paradigm of healthcare for them. This is a new way of approaching their own personal healthcare. This is just the top part of the page on the screen here, but this shows the progressive spinal degeneration, and underneath this is the timeline. So this is the bottom of that page, and each of you has received a laminated copy of our report of findings for you to use in your practice. And I have this in my adjusting rooms too. They're laminated. We use them over and over and over again for our patients in their report of findings. So, and I'll read the script with you in just a moment, but I want to show you this timeline. And this timeline is very valuable to you, because there's specific points in here that are emphasized in the explanation. And by having those specific points delineated with our report of findings paper or page, it allows, whether it's the doctor or the CAs, anybody that's delivering this report of findings knows they have to hit those points. So what does that do for you? That creates consistency. Consistency meaning that you have a repetitive recipe for patients starting care in your office, whether it's the doctor or the CAs. Everybody's going to get the same education process, building them up to a point where they can make an educated decision about lifetime care 1 year at a time. Okay, so we want to use this template across the board for everyone. It's a repeatable and predictable tool to use. This is a predictable tool, meaning that whoever uses this tool, you get a predictable outcome from that scenario, from that report of findings. So we're going to use that, and I'll read the script with you in a minute, but just sort of earmark this image in your mind, because this is what the script is referencing when I go through that with you. I thought I saw a hand go up, but I guess not. Great to see you on the call, Dr. Marsh. By the way, hello. I haven't talked to you for a little bit, but it's great to see you on the call. Dr. Knich, also great to see you. Anyways, let me keep going. So the next part, okay, so we did our report of findings. We went through that script, which I'll show you in a moment. But from there, we want to obtain an agreement. This is where there's a term, right? This agreement. This means that we're going to accept you as a patient based on an understanding and agreements that proceeding into your care plan, we're both going to follow these steps, right? These expectations. So it's really important that we get that agreement, right? And what is the agreement? The agreement is lifetime care is needed and necessary, and it starts with 12 months. Okay. By going through the diagram that I just showed you and using the script, which we'll cover in just a moment, you're going to have a predictable outcome whereby that agreement that you're seeing on the screen, those two agreements are going to be first and foremost, right? There's this expectation on your part that the patient is going to agree to those terms. And there's an expectation on the patient's part that by following those terms, you're going to provide the results that they're looking for, right? And if we provide the results that they're looking for, then of course, what does that lead to? Lifetime care 1 year at a time. Okay, so we want to make sure that that is clear. Lifetime care is needed and necessary. Lifetime care starts with 12 months. It doesn't start with, I'll see you a couple times until you feel better. It doesn't start with, when you're out of pain, I'll see you later and call me when you need me because you're in pain again. No, that's not what these agreements are based on. Agreements are based on each patient getting the optimum level of care, the optimum amount of chiropractic care to correct or stabilize their subluxations and provide a lifetime benefit to maintain a higher threshold of health and healing, right? So that's what the agreement is based on. So from there, we're going to practice the report of findings, which we'll do that right now on the script. So let me just jump over to that, and you can see on the website here, I went in. Now, I want to just point out something briefly, that on the home page, the materials for last week are showing. And so I apologize about that, but you can always find the materials, and I'll take you to them right now. So if I go to the home page, you'll see that, yes, this is future health projections. That was last week, week 5. But if you go up to the top and you click on training, then that will take you to the overview of the modules. You click on our current module, which is module 3, and then you just scroll down to week 6. And in week 6 is creating care plans. So that's all right there. And there's videos, there's a demonstration of me doing this. There's actually a demonstration of how to include the health talk into the recommendations. There's a demonstration of me talking about getting a commitment, right? When I showed you that slide about the agreements, the 2 agreements, then in this video, we talk about that. So you can watch those videos, but I want to jump into these materials here. And I want to jump right to that script. So here is the script that goes through, or that covers the details in that chart, which this is the chart, right? On the slide, you saw this part of it, the progressive spinal degeneration. And then on the next slide, you saw the section below it. So this was the next slide. And I want to just circle a couple things on here, or actually, I guess I won't be able to circle them, but I can highlight them. So this right here, we're going to be talking about this part. We're also going to be talking about this part right here. Okay. We'll be outlining the 3 different types of care, right? Initial, corrective, and supportive care. So we're going to talk about those. And that's pretty much it from this chart. Now, if you wanted to go into more detail, that's fine. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to talk about these dots. Why do these dots get further apart? So just wanted to emphasize those parts of this diagram. And my CAs have this dialed. They've got this thing down. It's really great. And it's not hard to be able to get this down when you follow the script I'm about to show you. So while you're visualizing that diagram, I'm going to jump back over to here. So, and this is the doctor or the CA, whoever's delivering the report of findings. Did you have a chance to review this handout, our report of findings? Yes, it was helpful, especially the part about subluxation degeneration. As it explains here, your initial chiropractic care occurs in 3 phases: initial care, corrective care, and then you point. Now, I want to just expand my screen here for a moment just to point something out. When you're talking about something, and I'm just going to grab a piece of paper here just so that I can just demonstrate it this way. If I'm talking about something on this page and I want the patient to be able to see it and understand it, I'm going to have it in front of me like this, and I'm going to actually point with my finger precisely at the words I want them to read. See, we all have a tendency, I should say, to be distracted, right? We're thinking about something else. Oh yeah, that's right. I almost forgot I'm supposed to do that thing tomorrow, whatever it is. So when I hold a page out in front of you and there's a bunch of text on it that's semi-unfamiliar to me as a new patient, right? then my mind tends to wander because I'm not focused. I don't understand completely. And so I'll start wandering. But if somebody says, read this in your mind, subconsciously, you're thinking, well, which part am I supposed to read? Is it the top? Is it the bottom? What word is it? I don't have time to really scan the whole thing. So again, your mind starts to wander. So we want to keep our patients focused. So I want to just teach you a technique for that, because as I'm pointing at this, I'm actually going to point to exactly the words that I want them to read. Okay. And I know I'm not holding the whole page up. What I'm holding doesn't really matter, but it's the concept of that. I want you to use your finger and hold it up like this, and use your finger and say, this part is what this says right here. So in the script, when I just said, your initial chiropractic care occurs in phases, I said, and boy, I don't want to get it out right now. It's behind me in my binder. I have my binder. It's right behind me, but I'm not going to take the time to pull it out right now. So there's the 3 phases, right? There's the initial care, there's the corrective care, and then I put my finger right where the text says, and I let the patient read it, supportive care. So they know exactly what they're supposed to say. It's right there. They can't miss it. And by doing it in that way, you're building that understanding with them, and they're not feeling intimidated. They're not feeling pressured. They're feeling comfortable. Okay. So I just wanted to demonstrate that for you. So then you continue, right? The patient said supportive care. That's the 3rd phase of their chiropractic care series on that timeline on the diagram. Yes, this process takes from, and then again, I'm pointing right to the letters and the words on the diagram. So this process can take from 1 to 2.5 years, or 40 to 120 visits, depending on how long you've had the condition. Actually, and I closed it, so I can't go back to that. These dots show that you'll need more frequent visits in the beginning, and then or initially, after corrective care, what does it show will happen to your visits? And you delineate that with your fingers. And they say, I won't need to come in as often for adjustments. That's right. And then down here, it says symptoms are gone. Now remember, I showed you that just now on the diagram. It says symptoms gone. With our advanced techniques, many patients' symptoms resolve quickly. Using this timeline, does that mean that your care is finished when your symptoms are gone? Patient says no, right? So you want them to actually say that, right? How many of us have had patients that they say, hey, doc, my symptoms are gone. I feel like $1,000,000. I guess I'm done. I'll call you when I need you. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Haven't you heard anything I've been saying? Maybe it would be better, doctors, if it wasn't us saying it. Maybe it would be better if it was actually the patient saying it, right? How much more beneficial, how much more educational, how much more affirming would it be if our patients are actually saying the words themselves as they learn these concepts, right? So practice this and get comfortable with it. So it says, or the patient says, I won't need to come in as often for adjustments. That's right. Here it says symptoms are gone with and so this is a chance for you to use your unique qualities, right? Unique qualities in your practice. With our advanced techniques, many of our patients' symptoms resolve quickly. Using this timeline, does that mean that your care is finished when your symptoms are gone? Right? That's a great question to ask, because we don't want our patients to just run off because their symptoms are gone. No. Does that mean I should keep coming even after I feel better? And then, of course, we don't want to pressure our patients. So what do we say? Well, that's your decision. However, could a person be fooled into thinking their subluxations are gone simply because they don't have any symptoms? Right? That's a great question to ask. And I'll even let them know, maybe not in so much of a question form, but I'll just say, I want to make sure that you don't, that if you feel like $1,000,000, which is what we want you to feel like $1,000,000, but don't let that fool you into thinking that the subluxations are gone or have been fully stabilized yet, because you won't know it initially, right? And a great example, well, actually, we're going to get into that. There's an example on the page here. Let's see. Okay. So I said simply because they don't have any symptoms. Well, yes, from the degeneration I can see on the x-rays, because we've showed them their results now, I would want to continue. Well, good. Some of the damage is permanent, right? So we showed them that on their x-rays, or we showed them the inflammation, or we showed them the scan, right? Whatever it is that we showed them, we want to let them know there's some damage in there. Whether it's permanent or not, you don't have to, obviously that's a case-by-case basis. Can your spine ever be 100% and completely normal again if there was to be permanent damage? Or in other words, if it progressed until there was permanent damage, could your spine be 100% normal again? And How long should you maintain your condition after we stabilize it? No, some damage will always be there, so I should maintain it forever. That's correct. Here's subluxations, and then here I give you a couple of analogies here. Or I think maybe it's just one on this page, but here's a good analogy. And I'm going to use another one if it's not on here, so you'll have two of them. So the analogy is your condition is, your subluxations are similar to a person with diabetes who takes regular insulin. Can their condition reverse so they don't need insulin? And what would happen if they stop? Well, no, it can't reverse, and they need insulin to stay healthy. If they stop, they'll get much worse. In other words, their condition will go downhill. So that's a great analogy. Now, another analogy, if they don't have permanent damage, this is a good analogy to use. So there's two scenarios here, right? And I've kind of framed them. If you can clearly see that there's permanent damage on someone's spine from long-standing subluxations, don't water it down. Let them know there's permanent damage. We want to stop the damage and not allow it to get worse. If they don't have permanent damage and yet there's clearly a subluxation there, then we have an opportunity maybe to get 100% stability. Although I think it goes without saying that our lifestyles and just our general lifestyles for all of us are lifestyles in which subluxations are promoted, right? There's just things that we're doing. We all have stress on our body. We all have stress on our nervous system. And what does stress do? This is kind of a sarcastic way of saying it, but it gets on your nerves, right? But stress affects our nervous system, and stress can lead to subluxations. So we want our patients to work on, getting the subluxation stabilized, but we want to make sure that they're clearly understanding that our lifestyles in general are damaging to our nervous system. And so we need to be proactive and stay ahead of that damage by continuing with our chiropractic care. So back to the screen on this example, the diabetes example is a good one when somebody has some visible damage in their spine that you are showing them, say they're a phase 2 or a phase 3, hopefully not a phase 4. If they're in a phase 1 and the damage is not visibly permanent, you could use another example. And that's different than the person with the diabetes. That's right here. So again, I'll open up my screen. So the example that you could use in the case, like I shared, of the young man, the boy that I just took care of, is braces on the teeth, right? I had braces on my teeth. And when somebody has, so I could ask the question here. So let's see, Daniel, you'll be my patient. So Daniel, I had braces as a kid. Did you ever have braces on your teeth? Yes, I did. Okay, perfect. Then this will make sense to you. When we got our braces on, it was to correct the misalignment. And that can sometimes take a couple years, right? And even just to move our teeth a couple millimeters. But once we get that correction in place, if we don't wear the retainer, what happens to our teeth? Once the braces are off, if we don't wear our retainer, what happens? And they say they just go back to where they were. The misalignment returns. Exactly. Now, in the case of your spine, we're moving bones just a couple of millimeters, right? It's not a huge movement. It's significant, though, because it stops the damage to your nervous system. It allows your nervous system to function more correctly, and it balances your spine to stop the wear and tear. So if we provide all this correction and we get you to a point where it's actually stabilized and it's either fully corrected or at least the damage is stopped, and then we stopped adjusting you, it's kind of like the person that had braces on and then they didn't wear their retainer. So if you were to do that, what would happen to your teeth? I'm sorry, not your teeth. What would happen to your subluxations? And it's the same answer, right? I'm asking a question first. If a person doesn't wear their retainer after braces, what happens to their teeth? Well, they go back to where they were and they're crooked again. If you get your subluxation stabilized and then you don't continue with your care, what happens? Well, it goes back to where it was and it's misaligned again. So you can see the questions are very similar and therefore the answers are very similar. The first question was a question the patient easily answered because they know it's an analogy they understand. They maybe even had experience with it. And so therefore it's easy to provide the same answer to the second question, which is a concept that maybe they're not as familiar with, but now based on that line of questioning, they have a clear understanding of why it's important to maintain the correction, right? So we build up to it through those questions to bring about that new understanding. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so I can use the person with diabetes if there's permanent damage that's visible on the spine. If there's not permanent damage, then I'd probably be more likely to use the braces analogy. Okay, so no, they need to, okay, so and then we read that. Your condition is very similar to a person who had braces and got their teeth straightened, or your condition is very similar to a person who has diabetes. There's some permanent damage there, but it can be maintained and the damage can be stopped if they maintain their condition correctly, which means that you can enjoy optimum health if you manage it correctly. So if you don't support the corrections, what happens? My subluxations will get worse and continue to degenerate until they fuse. That's right. And then here we come in for the punchline, right? Again, we're repeating the sequence that I started our webinar today with. That's right. So for the doctor to accept you as a patient, it is only with your agreement to follow through with these recommendations. And the patient says, I appreciate your concern. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. So again, when we started out, we did the push off at the beginning. That was the doctor introducing the CA to deliver the report of findings. We continued on. Then we did the demand for care, which is where the patient requests recommendations. So which we then provide, but we're building up to that because we went through the analogies first with either the braces analogy or the insulin analogy. Okay. Continuing right along. So here's the corrective care worksheet. Now, this is how you lay out the roadmap and make sure that they understand they understand what it's going to take to get the results that they want, right? So on the corrective care worksheet, sorry, you know what? I'm sorry. So we just went through an update with our system, and many of you have been calling in. So thank you for your feedback. We had a couple of glitches, a couple of subluxations, but we're working those out. One of the glitches was that it didn't update to the current version of each of our documents. So we're working on reloading those and getting those up to speed. So when you see on the date here that this is maybe an outdated version, just know that the versions, we will get those updated on the site and you'll be able to use them and print them out in your offices. But that anyway, so this is the care plan worksheet. And this is a care plan worksheet. I thought I opened the sample, but that's okay. We've got that here. Then here is the outline, right? So this is what we just went through on the PowerPoint. Doctors are sometimes reluctant to recommend more visits beyond pain relief, fearing the patient may decline and seek care elsewhere to meet their immediate needs. However, education can change that, right? As long as we're educating our patients, they have a better understanding, they can make more intelligent decisions about their healthcare. Mainstream healthcare often promotes reduced patient interaction during doctor's visits. This may come at the expense of obtaining lasting results. Recommending a fast track to improve health and then following up with a plan to retain those changes for years to come will improve results and be welcomed by most patients. So don't stop short because you're fearing that the patient will say no. They want what it is that you're recommending, and they want your honest recommendations. So follow these steps when you're creating your care plans. Create a short-term care plan that's customized. So we call that a corrective care plan, i.e. 8 weeks at 2 to 3 times a week, right? It's a short, condensed, action-packed, more frequent visit schedule. Then set a goal to reevaluate after 12 months to measure progress, right? So we can, let me just open up my screen just to explain this, because what I like to do is I like to say now, because they're saying, tell me what you recommend, right? That's based on the demand for care. We say, okay, great. Let me show you this general overview first, and then now I'm going to show you specifically what you need. The first thing that I'm going to tell you about what you need is there's some damage there. There's some corrections that are going to take some time, as I showed you on the diagram. So we're going to need to plan on retaking your x-ray in 12 months. So I want to make that really clear right up front. So in 12 months from now, we're having a conversation about all the progress you've made, which is great, but most importantly, that we've stopped the damage, right? And we won't know that short of 12 months because these are changes that evolve slowly. And so we have to have that in place. So we're going to start with the big picture. Okay, so you see how I did that? I started with the big picture. Now I'm going to back up the math and go through the care plan. See, I want to make sure that I'm emphasizing this because I don't want you to start off short and say, okay, we're going to see you 3 times a week for 8 weeks. And then after that, it's going to go to once a week. And then we're going to keep going and going and going and going and going until 12 months when we retake your x-ray, right? They may just stop at the 8 weeks and they're not even going to hear anything you're saying, and then their eyes are going to gloss over. So make sure that we start with the big picture in mind and then back it up from there to ensure that they understand what it is that the big picture looks like first. Okay. So we're gonna set a goal to reevaluate after 12 months to measure progress. Okay. So you could do it in the 1-2, like I just showed you. As I said, I like to start with the big picture in mind and then back up from there. Now, I know for some of you, if you're a little newer in practice, that might be uncomfortable for you. You're like, oh my gosh, if I start with a year, they might say no, and then I'll never even get to explain the 3 times a week for 8 weeks. I'll never even get to that. But trust me, if you start with the big picture and then you back up from there, they will comply with your care plan. They'll follow through and and the results will pay off, right? Okay, so last, add the visits between the end of the corrective care and the 12-month care plan. 12-month evaluation with an ideal maintenance schedule, i.e. weekly visits, every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever your maintenance schedule looks like, right? So we started out by, let me just frame that one more time. So I started out by saying we need an x-ray in 12 months. We want to make sure that we're going to confirm that the damage has been stopped. Now, to start off, we're going to see you for the first 8 weeks, 3 times a week. That's going to get you the results that you need, short term, and it's going to show us that your spine is responding appropriately, right? We're going to be doing tests to measure your progress, and we'll see that everything's responding appropriately. Assuming that it is, then at the end of the 8 weeks, then we'll set up a new schedule for you. It'll get easier. I like to say that because that's what they want to hear. It'll get easier. You'll actually just be coming in once a week or twice a month after that. And we'll give you exercises you can do on your own so that in between your visits, because they're more spread out at that point, you'll hold your adjustments in between the visits, even though we're seeing you less often. Okay, so you can describe that sequence as it goes. So we started with the big picture, we backed up, and now we're breaking it down into its smaller pieces. Okay, so let's go back here. I do want to just digress for a moment too, because I just had this question from one of our members this week. And it was basically this, that a patient was saying, well, I just want to come in for what my insurance covers, number one, or why don't I just start out with the short term because I want to make sure you can get results for me. Actually, and let me open up my screen again for this one because those two scenarios are very similar, right? Why don't we start with what my insurance covers and then we'll see where that goes. Why don't we just start out? I want to make sure that I'm feeling better. And if I am, sure, then I'll continue on. Now, we all know that once a patient's feeling better or their insurance maxes out, the chances of them continuing decreases, right? Maybe how much, who knows, right? But it does decrease after that. So it's better to set the roadmap from the beginning for the whole care plan. So how to respond to that. If the patient says, well, I want to see how I feel, and then I'll tell you if I'm committed for the long term, you can respond by saying, let's assume that you're going to get great results, that you're going to feel better. You're going to be happy with your results. In that scenario, why don't we map out your whole care plan? I'll tell you why. First of all, the technique that I've designed for you, for your adjustments based on your individual circumstances, is one that I feel will definitely get the results that you're looking for. And I stand by my word. If at any point along the care plan, you're not seeing the results, one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to notice it first and I'm going to say, hold on, let's put the brakes on. Something's not responding right. We need to either change course or stop altogether. I'll tell you that if I see that. Conversely, number two, you might tell me I'm not happy with my results. Well, in that case, it's not a contract. I mean, we want you coming here because you're happy with the care that we're providing. So if you came to me and said, hold on, I don't like this, we just stop. We stop taking care of you. I may refer you to another doctor. That's fine. But let's go into it with an optimistic outlook and let's plan on getting the best results because I'm confident based on my experience, and we've helped many other patients with the exact same condition that you have. I'm confident we're going to see results and you're going to be happy. Okay. If not, we stop. Number two, with the insurance, after what the insurance is mainly interested in is you getting out of pain. That's it, right? They would much rather you go to CVS and buy a bottle of Tylenol for $5 than they would for you putting in the time and the energy to actually get a solution that's going to solve your situation long term, right? They'd much rather do that because it's much less money for them. Now, since their interest is only in getting you out of pain, that's why they put limits on how many visits you have covered. So if you want to shrink wrap your results down to just barely getting by out of pain and not actually correcting the cause of the problem, what's going to happen to the cause of the problem in the long term? Is it going to get better or worse? Well, it's going to get worse. Now, the insurance company doesn't care about that. All they care about is their profits. That's why they shrink wrap those visits. But we're more interested in getting you better. So why don't we design a game plan that's going to get you the results that you want and need, make sure that it's affordable, will incorporate your insurance. But as you've seen, based on the results that we had on your exam, the limitations that your insurance place on you isn't going to get you the results that you need. It's only going to give you a Band-Aid for the situation that you're in right now, and that's it. And is that really what you want? I don't think so. Okay. So I wanted to share that with you because that's important for when patients bring up that situation. Okay. Okay. So let's keep going though, because there's a little bit more here. Excuse me. So by providing education, subluxation education for a better understanding about the full benefits of chiropractic care, patients enjoy great results beyond short-sighted pain relief, and the practice will retain more patients. Doctors who skip this important step will never know if their message would have been well received and followed. By focusing only on the short-term pain relief, many patients will leave feeling better without ever knowing the full potential of what was possible. It's kind of a strong statement there, right? We don't want to shortchange our patients. This is a disservice to the patient and a disservice to the chiropractic profession, leaving us to compete against other approaches that do not match chiropractic philosophy or objectives. Okay, so that was that last document. So hopefully that really lays out the framework. And I want to finish today with, let's see, let me open this up. I want to finish today with how you fit this into your practice. We're all busy. We have busy practices, busy lives. We've got our teams and we want to have, we want to support our teams. So I want to just frame this in terms of how you can sequence this in and have it be efficient or add to your efficiency to serve more patients. So doctors, it's your responsibility to interpret the results of the exam and the consultation, right? You interpret those results and you formulate a care plan. So what we do in my office is I have about 3 or 4 different templates. And when I'm reviewing the results, I assign that patient based on those results into one of, I'll just call it 4. I think there's 2 more, but it has to do with insurance or children, pediatrics, seniors, average cases, unique cases. So I think there's about 4 or 5 of them. So, but let's suppose I review those findings and I say, what I'm going to recommend for this patient fits template 3. Then I take out a blank care plan worksheet and I write a number 3 at the top and I sign it. Okay. Now, based on my signature, that documents that I made those recommendations. This was not a CA just randomly making recommendations. It wasn't arbitrarily assigned, which a CA cannot make recommendations, right? They can follow recommendations, but they can't make them. So by putting a number 3 on top and signing it, now I know my CA can fill in the rest of that care plan worksheet and have it ready for the report of findings and even deliver the report of findings based on those recommendations, after which I would then adjust the patient, right? So I wanted to just give you that framework because it makes it really streamlined, really simple, and very easy to follow. And I'll have just a stack of those files ready for me at the end of the shift. These were our new patients that we saw. They need your input, right? And I just take my care plan worksheet, I write a number on it, I sign it, and I put it back in the file. And then that goes to my report of findings CA to complete the documents before the patient's report of findings at the next visit. So that's how we streamline those care plan worksheets. There's a nice other piece to that, because sometimes midstream, like let's say a patient says, I can't come here that often. Oh, by the way, I do have insurance that covers chiropractic care. I forgot to bring it last time. Whatever that is, if there's a change midstream, my CAs know they can modify that care plan on the spot. They can cross out they won't cross out the number 3 in my example. They'll just write in a new recommendation on there. That goes back to me. I look at it and I say, okay, the patient can't come that often. My CA reduced the frequency. Am I okay with that? Is it still going to get the results that we need for this patient? And if I am, then I sign off on a new care plan worksheet and I turn it back into the CA, and it becomes a custom template, or as we call it, a modified care plan. So we just modified the template number 3 into something else. I sign off on it and it's good to go. So that sequence is really helpful for you to follow in terms of your flow and just making it easy and efficient for everybody. Okay. Dr. Marsh jumped off. I just missed him too. I wanted to say hello again, but actually, I do have a question though, because we have one of our all-star teams on the call today. Dr. Kinich, you and your team. I'd love to hear from your team. I don't want to pick on anybody because I see a couple of your team on the call, but I'd love to hear from you about the report of findings templates and how you've been able to incorporate that for the CAs with the care plans. So I was just going to say, which one of you would like to chime in? And I see Dr. Kinich raising his hand already. So Dr. John, welcome to the call and take it away.
Thanks, Scott. I was actually just texting my staff that I like the templates premise, and we basically do use templates, but we haven't formalized it like into a 1, 2, 3, or I think that's a great way to do it because so many people have the same insurances, and the frequency is pretty much going to be based on a pattern of whether you think they're going to get better faster or shorter. And it also kind of gets you to pre-commit to the idea that you want everybody to be on supportive care through the year instead of, thinking about the individual so hard. Yes. But I do think that we already kind of run it the way you described, but I like how you give authority to the staff to listen to the patient and make modifications based on what they're hearing, and then you can just authorize it because the staff knows what they're doing. So if you don't doubt your staff, I think you can really go with it.
And even if your staff are new or not experienced yet, it's a great learning experience, right? For them to get up to speed quickly. Because when we have new staff or new CAs, that's our intention right away, is like, how fast can I get this person up to running the 5-minute mile and getting the efficiency that we need? How fast can we get there? And it's just a great way to get to that point as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and it's just a teamwork thing. It's the report of finding is not just for the doctor, it's not just for the patient, it's for everybody involved. We're all on a big team, getting the patient what they need when they need it as conveniently and as efficiently as possible.
Absolutely. And so actually, while I've got you, because I see some of your team on the call, I just want to apologize last week because I know you had a question or there was something that you really wanted them to be able to see, and we had that glitch going on. So just wanted to follow up as an opportunity. Is there any other questions that anyone on your team has from last week or anything you wanted me to review and cover?
Oh, it was, I think it was reviewing the subluxation before the report of findings really kicks in. Because that's something we do regularly, but some of us have more experience with it than others.
Yeah. So, would you like me to cover that?
Sure.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to mute your line for a minute while I'm doing that, and then I can open it back up, of course. So his question is a great question, because that moment, that meeting between the CA and the doctor before meeting the patient and their spouse to start the report of findings is it's kind of a bonding meeting, right? It's hey, here's a person, an individual that needs our help. We're all here to help this person. And we're about to go in and tell them some good news. And we're also about to go in and tell them some bad news, which when you're, in the presence of a doctor and you get bad news, nobody wants to hear that. But we have some bad news in the sense that there's a condition in your spine that is a serious condition, and we're not going to water that down. So that bonding moment between the doctor and the CA really kind of sets the tone for what's going to transpire in the report of findings. Now, at the same time, when I say tone, I don't mean complexity. I don't mean, my CA is now going to go through 4 years of medical school like we did to become chiropractors. That's not what I'm meaning. What I'm meaning is we want to break this down so that it's easily explainable, and it's also the patient's going to feel the empathy. They're going to feel the professionalism. They're going to feel the knowledge that's being delivered to them in terms that they can understand. Because if they can understand those terms, they're going to be much more likely to adopt our recommendations into their lifestyle. So I'll give you some examples around X-ray, because we use X-ray. It could be a thermal scan, it could be exam findings, but I'll start with the X-ray. I like to go through 3 parameters on the X-ray that my CA can identify and then transfer over or educate the patient about. So those 3 parameters on the X-ray is, number 1 is alignment. How is the alignment of this X-ray? Is it an anterior to posterior X-ray and there's a scoliosis? Well, that's front to back and it's crooked, right? Again, I'm breaking it down to basic terms. So alignment is the first one. Is it a side view of the neck or the lower back and they've lost the lordosis, or in other words, the curve is either flattened or shifted forward? Is the center of gravity over the shoulders in the neck like it should be? So number 1 is alignment. Number 2 is the disc spaces. And number 3 is the shape of the bones. Okay. And of course, I could get way technical on all of that, but that's not the point of this. Those 3 things, the alignment, the disc spaces, the shape of the bones, makes it easily transferable for your CA to explain with certainty, with professionalism, with conviction. Hey, patient, here's what normal looks like. What do you see on yours? And what I like about this is just how I said that, because I want my CA to be confident enough to explain what a normal X-ray looks like. This is what normal looks like. These are 3 parameters that we're looking for on a normal X-ray. And I want it to be so crystal clear that when the CA turns to the patient's X-ray, all they have to say is, what do you see that's different? And the education on the first part is so crystal clear that the patient can intelligently answer that question. What do you see that's different? So kind of back to where we started that thread, that interaction is really important between the CA and the doctor before the report of findings. And I, at this point, because I've done it so many times, and Dr. Knich, I know you have too, I like to be able to just say, okay, show me the patient's x-rays. What do you see that's an issue? And they'll just tell me, because they already know I'm looking for one of those 3 things or all of those 3 things. And I want them to tell me what jumped out at them. Now, I am going to hit on all 3. And why am I going to hit on all 3? Because when we go in the room, even though what jumped out at my CA first may not be what jumps out at the patient first. So we always want to give the patient the opportunity to let us know what jumped out at them as being the most obvious. And that's where we start the report of findings, or start that part of the report of findings, is with whatever jumped out at them. So as an example, just to make it simple, let's say we're looking at a lateral cervical, a side view of the neck, and the patient has lost the curve. They've got forward head tilt, and there's a disc that's compressed. Well, I would come up to the CA and say, she says to me, I've got John here. He's here for his report of findings. He's here with his wife, Mary, and I want to review the findings with you. That's great. I'm glad, and I'm looking forward to it. Tell me what you see. Well, I see that John has forward weight. He has a disc space that's smaller. There's a bone spur starting to form, and he's obviously lost the curve. That's right. And then we go in and we get started. And then when she or he, if your CA is a man or a woman, says to the patient, here's what normal looks like. There's a curve. It's centered. The disc spaces are equal in size. The bones all have congruent shapes. There's no bone spurs. There's no degeneration. That's normal. What do you see? And the CA is ready. Whatever their answer is, the CA now is ready to say, to connect with that observation that the patient made. So it's important to have that bonding first, so we're on the same page. Now, I'll carry it forward from there, because that's just going over the x-ray or the exam findings. How about the recommendations, right? Is your CA crystal clear on the recommendations? More importantly, or not more, but equally, is your CA crystal clear on why those recommendations are important? Why would I want to see a patient daily for the first week? Why would I want to see him 3 times a week for 7 weeks after that? Why would I want to see him once a week after that? What are the reasons? Because you know what? If you don't answer those questions, I guarantee you your patient's going to ask them. And then your CA is going to look confused or uncertain or, oh no, what do I say to that? Right? So we want to explain that. So my CAs know I want to see a patient each day for the first week because 2 reasons. I'm getting to know their spine. It may mean that I want to change the adjustments a little bit right out of the gates to ensure the best long-term results based on the findings that I'm seeing because I'm checking them each day, right? If I space it out too much, I'm left wondering, well, what happened? How long did they hold their adjustment? How long did the changes stick before they were lost? Those kinds of questions. So there's 2 reasons I like to see a patient more frequently in the beginning. It's number 1, so that I can make sure that the technique I've chosen for them is the correct one. And number 2, so they can see results faster. Now, what I didn't say was feel better faster. I'm not concerned about the symptoms. We're correcting the cause, right? So I want them to see results faster. It may not get rid of their pain, but they may be able to look over their shoulder when they're driving better, right? Or have more flexibility or pick up the kids a little easier, even though they're still in pain. So I want to see results faster. I want to get to know their spine, and that's why I made this recommendation. Beyond that, once it's stabilized, I feel like this patient will be able to hold their adjustments longer, right? So that's good. We don't have to see them as often, but I still want to see them 3 times a week because based on the extent of their condition, I feel like they're probably not going to hold their adjustments longer than 2 or 3 days before they lose the progress. And then they're shifting backwards and backpedaling. We don't want to have 2 steps, if I could say it right, 2 steps forward and then take 3 steps back. That would not work. So we're going to go from this schedule to ensure progress. Once it's stabilized, then we have this schedule. And I'm expecting that based on the exercises I'm incorporating with their adjustment schedule, they should hold their adjustments even longer so we can spread out their adjustments and they won't be subluxated in between visits, right? So that whole progression is explained so that any questions that come up, my CA, yours as well, Dr. Knich, are going to know this is the basis behind that recommendation. This is how we get the incredible results that we get in our unique practice. This is why patients travel from all over the place just to come see us and get the results that we can provide. So that was a great question. And actually, that took us right up against the hour. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thanks, everybody. And Dr. Davis, I saw you jump back on, so welcome back. But I am up against the hour and I have a call at 12. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, just email us, dctrainings@gmail.com. Anything I can help you with. Otherwise, I'll look forward to talking to you next week. And thanks again for joining.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.